There's nothing inherently wrong with playing the comparison game. Where we run into trouble is what we do with that information. Where we run into trouble and create issues is what is our interpretation or the meaning behind the comparison, and how do we internalize it? When I compare myself or my life or my performance or my results or anything to someone else, there's only one of two things that I'm going to feel. If it makes me feel less than, if it makes me feel like I'm not good enough, this other person is doing something better than me and that makes me feel less than, that needs to be a major red flag, because I don't want to do anything in my life that's consistently making me feel less than. However, if I use comparison as a way of inspiration, as a way of motivation, as a way of having a target of something I'm trying to reach for or stretch for, then I actually think comparison can be a very helpful tool. And of course, I'm talking about comparison of yourself to maybe someone else or something else. I'm a huge believer in using comparison of previous versions of myself to present versions of myself. I like to compare who I was a year ago to who I am today, or my level of mastery of a certain craft a year ago to what I can do today. I try not to compare outcomes and results. I try not to compare, how many social followers I have to someone else, how many books I've sold to someone else, what my keynote fee is to someone else, the types of vacations I take to someone else. I try not to compare outcomes and results. But for me, where I do draw inspiration and motivation is by comparing processes, comparing systems, comparing discipline, comparing consistency. I try and compare, not results, but I try to compare traits. If there's somebody that I follow on Instagram who I really enjoy their content, I'm not comparing how many followers or likes or views did they get versus what I get. That's not super helpful. What I do try and compare is what type of content did they put out? How helpful and meaningful and influential and impactful is the stuff that they put out? What's the style or format of the stuff that they put out? And those might be the yardsticks that I want to measure my own content with and say, hey, do I have room to improve in my consistency? Do I have room to improve in my professionalism? Do I have room to improve in the practicality or the applicability of what it is that I'm putting out? Is this stuff useful? It's not measuring the external metrics, but it's actually measuring the substance. Ultimately, everything that we could compare, there has to be some type of reference point, because everything is on a spectrum. Let's just say, for example, even if we're talking about restaurants and someone says, well, that restaurant is expensive. Well, that's a sliding scale, because expensive compared to what? If that restaurant is compared to McDonald's, then yeah, it probably feels very expensive. If that restaurant is compared to, a Michelin star restaurant in New York City, then it's probably not. So you can't really paint it with the picture of that is expensive. It's all a matter of what the reference point is. Anytime you're making any type of comparison amongst anything, you have to be aware of what the reference point is that you're using. Whenever I do find myself playing the comparison game, there's only two things that I'm trying to focus on. One is, when I'm making that comparison, how is it making me feel? And what is it that I'm actually comparing? As long as it's not making me feel less than, it's actually making me feel inspired, then then playing the comparison game can actually be beneficial. And then the second part is, what is it that I'm actually comparing? Am I comparing my results and my outcomes, which for me doesn't work real well? Or am I comparing traits? Am I comparing processes? Am I comparing systems? Am I comparing things I want to emulate? That's something that does serve me. And then the red thread that ties all of that together is, what is the reference point I'm using when I'm making this comparison? I think it's important to be able to zoom in and zoom back out, in order to make sure that comparison is accurate and that comparison is helpful.
If you know of a team, a business, an event, or organization that would benefit from a message like this, or you know of a group that needs help getting back to the basics, focusing on the fundamentals, and simplifying success, please have them visit alansteinjr.com.